Hey everybody, welcome back to the Print 3D channel. Today is November 19th, and that means day 323 of the 3DP 365 project. And on today's episode, I really wanted to push the limits of my gMax 1.5 XT Plus with a 0.5mm nozzle. I've been printing out a lot of models that had detail, but it was with perimeters and there was a lot of geometry involved. I was looking for something that had a lot of fine, small parts with a lot of detail into the model. And while browsing around on Thingiverse, I came across this Tydirium Shuttle model from Star Wars, and it looks like it was just a work in progress that was never actually finished, but it had a lot of detail and I really wanted to print it because it was split in half, which made it easier to print, and it was really cool because it was Star Wars related. And we did have a good print, we had a few problems with the print, and of course, my 0.5mm nozzle might have been a little bit too big for some of the parts. And we're going to talk about that next, so stick around. Hey everybody, welcome back, and thank you for joining me here for day 323 of the 3DP 365 project. As I was saying in the intro, I really wanted to push the limits of my gMax 1.5 XT Plus. I do have a 0.5mm nozzle, and I'm able to pick up a lot of detail in everything I print, but I haven't printed out anything with some fine detail or really small parts. And I really wanted to do something that looked cool, and that would be something that was actually Star Wars related. That was my intention all along. And when I was browsing around on Thingiverse, I found quite a few different Star Wars related models, like obviously the Millennium or Millennium Falcon. There's the Mars Bar Shuttle, which is just the Star Wars shuttle. But I think that Star Wars shuttle or Mars Bar Shuttle is a similar version to this one. I'm not familiar with all the vehicles, so sorry Star Wars fans, I'm not familiar with all the vehicle names. But I saw that there was one that was like just detailed model. It didn't have any moving parts in it, and that's this one, the Tydirium Shuttle. And back in 2015, when this model was posted, it was a work in progress. Now I know a lot of people have collected it, but nobody has really printed the model. And I really wanted to print it too because it had a lot of the detail that I was looking for to really push my gMax 1.5 XT Plus. And we downloaded this model from Thingiverse. And it comes split in half, and you can actually see the split there. It takes just the back section here, which makes it easier to print, and puts them both pieces down on the build plate. Now, of course, you could just do separate connected surfaces and separate the parts yourself in Simplify 3D. And I don't know if you can do that in other slicers, but I know Simplify 3D can do that. And then you could print these out separately and you could scale them up, which was my intention should the print turn out good enough to do that. And it actually did. The problem is that these little gun parts right here, and I don't know if you guys, well, you'll be able to see them in the close-ups and you can see them there. They're covered in strings. And the actual guns are actually right here. I have them. They're really hard to hold on to because they're super, super fine. Now, I'll try and hold these up so you guys can see that. There's a lot of stringing going on between them, and they're so fine, I don't think the nozzle is actually small enough to print them at this scale. So something like this, I would definitely have to scale up to really have a good, successful print. The other problem I had was a little bit of warping. Now, I like to use these little helper discs, or lily pads as they're called, to really hold down the smaller parts, or parts like this that print flat like this with these really thin areas during a long print, because obviously you want to print this a little bit slower so you pick up all the detail that's in the model. So I use these little lily pads or small helper discs. And I actually did use those when I printed the entire model as is on the build plate by itself with both parts. And that print, actually, I had to stop it because the back part finished printing, and I stopped it because this one was really warping. Let me put this down gently because I do have that super glued together, but I think it's going to pop because there was some more warping on that model. But on this print here, in the front here, there's definitely some warping going on. The lily pads didn't help. That actually was pulled up like this. So I should have probably put one in the middle, which was going to be my next solution. And the other two held on pretty good. They're not warped at all. And the detail was starting to actually turn out really, really good too, because I did use a 0.16mm layer height on this print. And I did put a little tiny bit of support material. I know it's crazy to think that I would actually try and put support material in this little spot here. But the support material pieces, they popped out clean, and it actually helped on the other print too. But there was some warping on this, so I had to cancel the print. And I went back into Simplify 3D, and I did the Simplify 3D's command for connected surfaces to disconnect them so you could have two separate parts. And then I just took the first part, which is the main part here, and I added a couple more lily pads. I put one in the middle here on each of the wings, and then I moved them in a little bit deeper on the tips a little bit to help out. And it did help out a little bit. There was still a little bit of warping because it turned out to be a 7-hour print. Now the reason why it's a 7-hour print is I dropped this down to 30 millimeters per second. I did have it at 35 for my original print, and it was still causing warping. Now the ambient temperature in here was a little bit cooler than it should have been, and maybe that might have had something to do with it, and we do have a fan going in here too. But I think the warping is just basically, it's just really thin parts, and for the duration of the print and what's going on with the print, it's going to happen unless you do some sort of support. Now normally you could probably just do a brim on this type of print, but I didn't want to have all that cleanup because there's a lot of edges here that match up with the other edges in the detail of the model, especially in the bottom part here, where that brim would make a difference. So I decided to go with the lily pads or the helper discs. And I'll put the links for those down in the description along with this model too. And we actually had, like I said, a semi-successful print. I actually think this turned out pretty cool. It was a good test print to see how well my gMax could handle all the detail. And it actually turned out pretty good, and I'll try and show you this. I did super glue this together because there was a little bit of warping, and there was a little bit of delamination on that first layer because of the lily pads, and I'm not sure why that happened. I've had that happen before in other prints, just not as often, but there was a little bit of delamination, so you're going to see some gaps in here. But most of the detail in the model actually turned out really, really good. I mean, there is a lot of detail on here. It's just that there's some stringing going on, and it's mid-layer stringing, which I don't understand about that. I think it's just when it's doing the infill and it changes direction, it wisps a little bit of string off. So there were strings coming out of like the middle of the wing, which was really weird. But either way, all of the detail that's on the model actually printed. We did do a 0.16 millimeter layer height, like I said, and we did use 3 top layers, 3 bottom layers, 3 perimeters, and 10% infill just to make sure I had enough to make sure this was going to stick together and would be a little bit sturdier and not be hollow, because I don't think you could do this without infill. And there's some areas that are kind of mushy, but it's okay. Like I said, this was more of a test to see if my gMax could hold out some of the detail. And there's some parts, like below the top wing, above the cockpit area, there's like a grill there, and you can really see all the detail there. So I think it was actually a pretty good, successful print. It just had a little bit of warping, and of course I tried to push the limits of my 0.5 millimeter nozzle a little bit too far, and the little guns broke off in my fingers as I was trying to clean off the strings. But for now, I'm pretty happy with the print, and I'm definitely going to gMaxSize this at a future date, so you're probably going to see this sometime before the end of the year. Well, that about wraps it up for day 323 of the 3DP 365 project. If you're looking for ways to support the channel, check out those affiliate links down in the description. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, comment, like, and share those videos, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.